Just 1 minute ago, a decision was made behind palace doors that no one saw coming. A private school performance, a family invitation, and a shocking last-minute block that sent tremors through the monarchy. Prince William has reportedly stepped in and stopped Queen Camilla from attending Prince George's school event, and insiders say this wasn't about scheduling. It was personal. Deeply personal. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The message, according to those within palace circles, was delivered with chilling calm. There was no shouting, no dramatic confrontation in gilded halls, just a quiet instruction passed through private channels. Camilla would not attend. What had been confirmed days earlier was suddenly withdrawn, and those tasked with managing royal diaries found themselves scrambling to rewrite plans that had already been set in motion. It was abrupt, deliberate, final. And the timing moments before the performance made it impossible to ignore the weight behind it. At first glance, the palace attempted to downplay the shift. A minor adjustment, a scheduling oversight, a misunderstanding. But insiders insist there was nothing accidental about this. William's authority, usually exercised with careful restraint, was asserted firmly. He did not negotiate. He did not defer. He made the decision as a father first and as the future king second. That distinction matters, because when a prince chooses fatherhood over protocol, the message travels far beyond a school auditorium. The underlying tension, sources suggest, centered on George's emotional well-being. William has long been protective of his eldest son, acutely aware that George's childhood is unfolding beneath the weight of expectation and legacy. A school performance, something meant to be simple and celebratory, had quietly transformed into a potential spectacle. The presence of Camilla, now queen, would have shifted attention, altered narratives, and perhaps in William's view placed unnecessary pressure on a young boy still learning to navigate his place in a centuries-old institution. Behind closed doors, aides moved quickly to contain what they feared could spiral into something far larger. Conversations grew hushed. Calls were placed. Explanations were crafted. Because this was not merely a calendar change. This felt like a line being drawn. And those closest to the situation began whispering that the block was not spontaneous at all. It was the culmination of months, perhaps years of simmering strain that had finally reached its breaking point. What makes this moment so explosive is not the event itself, but what it represents. A school performance is harmless on the surface, but in royal life, nothing is ever just symbolic. Attendance signals approval, presence conveys power, and absence? Absence can echo louder than applause. By stepping in, William did more than protect his son's evening. He signaled boundaries. He asserted control over who influences the next generation of the crown. And perhaps most telling of all is the quiet intensity with which this was handled. No public statements, no open conflict, just a decisive act that insiders describe as both protective and defiant. Because if this were truly about logistics, it would not have shaken the palace so deeply. If it were merely about space in a crowded hall, it would not have left senior aides unsettled. This was something else. Something rooted in history, emotion, and legacy. And if we look closely, this single blocked invitation may reveal far more about the future of the monarchy than anyone is willing to admit. But to understand why William would take such a dramatic step, we have to go back to the quiet tensions that have been building inside the royal family for far longer than anyone realized. The cameras never captured it. The speeches never hinted at it. But beneath the polished smiles and choreographed appearances, something fragile has been cracking for years. The relationship between Prince William and Camilla has always been diplomatic, never deeply warm. And according to palace insiders, that emotional distance may have finally reached its breaking point. To understand the weight of this fracture, you have to begin with memory, not policy, not protocol, but memory. William's loyalty to Princess Diana has never been theatrical. It has been quiet, steady, almost sacred. Those who know him say that every major decision he makes passes through an invisible filter. Would this honor her or erase her? And when Camilla's role within the monarchy expanded, when titles shifted and public narratives softened, that internal filter did not disappear. If anything, it sharpened. For years, William maintained composure. He fulfilled duties alongside Camilla without visible tension. He supported his father's happiness publicly, even as private emotions lingered beneath the surface. But insiders suggest that diplomacy does not equal trust. There were subtle power currents moving beneath the family structure, particularly as Charles began leaning more heavily on Camilla's counsel. Influence inside the inner circle is never neutral. Every voice carries weight. And as Camilla's prominence grew, so did whispers that she was shaping more than ceremonial engagements, she was shaping direction. Becoming queen did not simply elevate Camilla's title, it amplified her presence. Public sympathy gradually shifted. Headlines softened, appearances multiplied. For some, it signaled healing within the institution. For William, however, it may have reopened an old wound that never fully closed. Because while the monarchy adjusted its narrative, personal history does not revise itself so easily. Emotional timelines do not follow public relations strategy. The tension became more pronounced when discussions turned toward the children. George, Charlotte, Louis, the next generation. William has reportedly been unwavering about one thing: his children's upbringing must not be consumed by palace politics. They are heirs, yes, but they are also young. And according to insiders, private disagreements surfaced over exposure, tradition, and symbolism. What events were appropriate? Who should attend? How much royal presence was too much? There has been a growing perception within certain circles that Camilla's role in George's life should remain ceremonial, not intimate. A queen at state occasions. A supportive figure in public milestones, but not necessarily embedded within formative childhood moments. That distinction may seem subtle to outsiders. Inside the palace, it is seismic, because proximity signals trust. And trust, in this context, is layered with decades of unresolved emotion. William's protectiveness has often been interpreted as modern parenting, but some suggest it is something deeper, a quiet determination to shield his children from the complexities that shaped his own youth. He knows what it means to grow up under scrutiny. He understands how symbolic relationships can become emotional burdens. And when Camilla's presence intersects with George's milestones, it does not exist in isolation. It echoes with history. Which brings us back to the school performance. What looked like a simple event may have triggered something far more profound. Not anger, not impulsiveness, but accumulated tension. A moment where personal memory collided with present authority. A decision shaped not only by current dynamics, but by years of carefully contained resentment that finally found its outlet. Because beneath the diplomatic smiles and formal unity, the past has never truly disappeared. It has simply waited, and as the day of George's school performance approached, those unresolved tensions quietly intensified behind palace walls. To outsiders, it was just a child's school performance. But to Prince William, this was sacred ground, a rare moment of normalcy in a life overshadowed by duty. And when reports surfaced that Camilla planned to attend, something shifted. Because this wasn't simply about attendance, it was about boundaries. For William, George's childhood is not a casual chapter in royal history. It is the foundation of a future king. Every public appearance, every headline, every whispered interpretation becomes part of that foundation. He understands better than anyone how easily a child's milestone can be absorbed into a larger narrative about the crown. And he has spent years trying to draw a clear line between statecraft and fatherhood. A school performance, in his mind, belonged firmly on the fatherhood side of that line. Those close to him say he is deeply aware of the symbolism that follows his son. George is not simply a schoolboy reciting lines or singing in a choir. He is the next link in a centuries-old chain. Even the smallest event can become a statement. That awareness creates a constant tension between privacy and inevitability. William has reportedly made it his mission to slow that inevitability down, to give George moments that feel untouched by politics, untouched by legacy, untouched by expectation. When word reached him that Camilla intended to attend, the calculation shifted, not because of hostility alone, but because of optics. Camilla's presence would not go unnoticed. Cameras would pivot. Commentary would follow. The story would subtly transform from a child's achievement to a tableau of royal hierarchy. William, according to insiders, feared that George would feel the weight of that shift. He did not want his son performing beneath the shadow of a complex family history. There was also memory at play. A previous family milestone, one meant to be intimate, had quietly become overshadowed by broader speculation and internal politics. William had watched as attention drifted away from the child at the center of it and toward the adults orbiting him. That experience lingered. It hardened his resolve. He would not allow another formative moment to be reframed as a symbol of reconciliation, rivalry, or power. More than anything, he wanted George to feel supported, not observed. There is a profound difference between being cheered for and being analyzed, between applause and scrutiny. William knows that distinction intimately. He grew up inside it. And if he can spare his son even a fraction of that pressure, he will. That instinct, fierce and unwavering, is not political. It is paternal. Catherine, those close to the couple suggest, quietly aligned with this stance. She understands the delicate balance between public duty and personal protection. Her support was not loud or confrontational. It did not need to be. Their partnership in raising their children has always been rooted in shared boundaries. And in this case, the boundary was clear. George's moment would belong to him. Yet beneath the protective reasoning, another layer simmered. This decision may not have been solely about Camilla as an individual. It may have been about influence, about who shapes the emotional landscape of the next generation. By stepping in, William was not just guarding a performance. He was asserting control over how and when royal symbolism touches his son's life. And that subtle assertion, that quiet act of drawing a line, carried implications far beyond a school hall. Because in the monarchy, control over the next generation is control over the future itself. But when Camilla learned of the decision, the response inside the palace was anything but quiet. Imagine preparing to attend your stepson's child's milestone event, only to be told at the last minute that you are not welcome. Sources say Camilla was blindsided. And in a palace where image is everything, being publicly blocked is not just embarrassing, it's destabilizing. For Camilla, this was never meant to be controversial. Those close to her insist she saw the performance as a quiet gesture of unity, a subtle reinforcement that the family stood together despite years of turbulence. Her attendance, in her view, would signal stability, continuity, acceptance. After everything the monarchy has endured, what could be more powerful than the Queen supporting the future king's son at a simple school event? But intention and interpretation rarely align within royal walls. When the message reached her that she would not be attending, the sting was immediate. Not loud, not theatrical, but sharp. Because exclusion, especially after years of navigating public skepticism and private resistance, carries weight. Camilla has spent decades reshaping her place within the institution. She endured criticism. She weathered scrutiny. She stood beside Charles through storms that threatened to consume them both. And now, at a moment she may have believed symbolized quiet acceptance, she was asked to step back. Those familiar with her inner circle suggest the decision reopened old wounds. There were years when she felt outside the center of the family narrative, tolerated but not embraced. Becoming queen had seemed to solidify her standing, to mark a turning point where history softened and roles stabilized. Yet this sudden block felt like a reminder that some doors remain only partially open. Titles can be bestowed, authority can be formalized, but emotional legitimacy is something far more fragile. The tension between personal pride and public composure became impossible to ignore. Camilla understands the monarchy's reliance on unity. She knows that visible discord fuels speculation, and so outwardly, restraint was maintained. No statements, no retaliatory gestures, just the steady discipline expected of a queen. But insiders whisper that beneath that discipline lay frustration, not simply at being excluded, but at the implication behind it. Because this was not framed as a joint family decision. It was William's call. And that distinction matters. It suggested a boundary she had not been permitted to cross. Within palace corridors, aides rushed to soften the narrative. Scheduling complexities, space limitations, miscommunications, anything to prevent the story from hardening into a visible rift. But Camilla's inner circle reportedly interpreted the block differently. Not as logistics, not as oversight, as deliberate distancing. At the center of this tightening storm stood King Charles, caught between his wife and his son, between loyalty and legacy. Those close to him say he was informed rather than consulted, placed in the uncomfortable position of managing the emotional fallout without inflaming it further. Silence, in this case, was strategic, yet silence can also feel like surrender. The atmosphere shifted. Conversations grew careful. Every interaction carried subtext. Because if a queen could be quietly excluded from a family milestone, what did that signal about influence, about hierarchy, about the shape of power within the next era of the monarchy? And as whispers began to circulate beyond private rooms, one unsettling question lingered in the air. Was this an isolated act of protection, or the beginning of something far more consequential? Because what happened next may have forced King Charles into the most uncomfortable position of his reign. For King Charles, this was more than a scheduling dispute. It was a collision between his past and his future, his wife and his heir. And insiders suggest he was informed of William's decision, not consulted. In a monarchy built on hierarchy, that detail alone speaks volumes. Charles has spent a lifetime balancing love and duty, often discovering that the two rarely align. His loyalty to Camilla is not a recent development. It is the result of decades of endurance, controversy, and eventual vindication. She stood beside him when public opinion was unforgiving. She absorbed criticism that could have shattered lesser resolve. Elevating her to queen was not only constitutional, it was personal. It affirmed that their long, difficult journey had led somewhere legitimate. So when she was quietly blocked from attending his grandson's milestone, it was not merely a diary alteration. It was a moment that touched the core of that loyalty. Yet Charles is not only a husband, he is a monarch. And stability has become the defining mission of his reign. After years of upheaval, scandals, departures, and generational tension, he understands how fragile public confidence can be. The image of unity is not decorative, it is structural. It holds the institution together. Any visible fracture risks widening into something uncontrollable. So when faced with William's decisive move, Charles found himself navigating a razor-thin line between protecting his wife and preserving the institution's calm surface. The most delicate layer of all, however, is fatherhood. William is no longer the young prince seeking guidance. He is a future king asserting authority in real time. Reports suggest Charles did not confront the decision directly. He did not override it. He did not publicly challenge it. Some interpret that silence as strategic restraint. Others see it as reluctant acknowledgement that power is already shifting. Because if William can set boundaries that affect the queen herself, it signals confidence, perhaps even inevitability. Speculation has swirled around Charles's choice to remain quiet. Was it wisdom? Was it exhaustion? Or was it recognition that the generational transition is accelerating faster than anyone anticipated? Charles knows that confrontation with his heir would only deepen internal divides. A public clash between king and prince would eclipse the original issue entirely. So silence became the safest path. But silence can carry its own message, one of concession, or at the very least acceptance of changing dynamics. There is also the broader fear of perception. If knowledge of this rift spreads beyond controlled whispers, it could undermine the carefully curated narrative of harmony. The monarchy thrives on continuity, father and son aligned, queen and heir respectful, grandchildren secure within a stable framework. A visible disagreement threatens that symmetry, and in a media landscape hungry for tension, even a subtle fracture can become a headline storm. But perhaps the most profound implication lies in what this moment reveals about William. Blocking Camilla was not impulsive rebellion. It was measured, controlled. It suggested that he is no longer waiting for the crown to shape the monarchy, he is shaping it now. That shift carries weight, because authority, once exercised successfully, rarely retreats. Charles may understand this better than anyone. He once waited decades to lead, navigating the complexities of being heir without overstepping. William, however, appears less hesitant. He acts, he defines, he draws lines, and each line redraws the internal map of power just slightly. The emotional conflict is undeniable. A king who fought to legitimize his partnership, a son determined to protect his own legacy, a queen seeking acceptance, a future monarch setting precedent. The collision is quiet, but it is seismic. And as the palace works tirelessly to maintain composure, one unsettling question begins to form: if William is willing to block Camilla here, where does his authority end? But beyond the palace corridors, the implications of this decision began echoing into the future of the monarchy itself. This wasn't just a family disagreement. It felt like a signal, a message, a quiet declaration that the future king is already shaping the monarchy in his own image. Blocking Camilla from George's event wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. For years, observers have wondered when William would begin defining the institution on his own terms rather than simply preparing to inherit it. That moment may have arrived not in a grand speech or sweeping reform, but in a single controlled decision about who stands beside his son. Because in royal life, influence is rarely loud. It is exercised through access, through proximity, through presence. And by limiting that presence, William established something powerful: the authority to decide how the next generation is shaped. This move set a precedent, subtle but unmistakable. It reinforced that when it comes to George, Charlotte, and Louis, the final word rests with their parents. Not with tradition, not with seniority, not even with the Queen. That clarity changes the internal equation. It redraws invisible lines that have long blurred within royal structures. The children are heirs, yes, but they are not communal property of the institution. They belong first to their parents' vision. There is also the unavoidable symbolism tied to Diana's legacy. Whether spoken or unspoken, every decision surrounding William's children carries echoes of the past. Protecting George's moment from political undertones can be interpreted as more than paternal instinct. It can be seen as a continuation of a promise that the next generation will not be consumed by narratives that once overshadowed childhood itself. That promise resonates deeply with a public still emotionally connected to Diana's memory, and William knows it. What makes this moment more striking is the confidence with which it was executed. There was no visible hesitation, no retreat once the decision was made. That composure signals a leader comfortable exercising authority even before formally ascending the throne. Palace observers have quietly noted the shift. William no longer appears as a cautious heir navigating deference. He appears decisive, intentional, focused on shaping a monarchy that reflects his priorities rather than simply preserving inherited dynamics. Catherine's position alongside him has strengthened in parallel. Their alignment is not reactive, it is unified. Together, they represent a modernized vision of royal parenting, one that values emotional security over ceremonial symbolism. That unity reinforces William's stance. It demonstrates that this was not an isolated impulse, but part of a broader philosophy about how the crown should evolve. Yet within palace corridors, concern simmers. Senior aides understand that even measured assertions of authority can be misinterpreted as division. The monarchy's survival depends on perceived cohesion. Every internal adjustment risks being magnified into a narrative of fracture. The fear is not the decision itself, but the ripple effect. If lines are drawn publicly now, what happens when larger issues arise? And that is where the foreshadowing grows heavier. Because moments like this rarely exist in isolation. They signal transition. A quiet transfer of influence that may be unfolding sooner than anticipated. Charles still reigns. Camilla remains queen. But William's shadow is lengthening. His imprint is becoming visible. If this was strategic, then it was strategy wrapped in restraint, a controlled demonstration of where authority begins and ends. And as the monarchy absorbs the weight of that message, it becomes harder to ignore the possibility that a new era is not approaching slowly. It is emerging in real time. And as the performance unfolded without Camilla present, one quiet detail stood out more than anything else. Inside the school hall, Prince George performed unaware of the political storm surrounding him. But those watching closely noticed something profound. The absence itself became the loudest presence in the room. For George, it was a simple moment. A line to remember. A note to hold. A child stepping forward, focused only on doing his best. Yet for the adults seated nearby, the atmosphere carried a weight that could not be ignored. William and Catherine remained entirely fixed on their son, their attention unwavering. deliberate. There was no distraction in their posture, no drift toward peripheral conversations. It was as if the world beyond that space had narrowed to a single purpose: support him, protect him, anchor him. And yet, even in that focus, there was an unspoken awareness. The space beside them, the one that might have been occupied, lingered in collective consciousness. It was not mentioned. It did not need to be. Because sometimes what is missing speaks louder than what is present. Those attuned to royal dynamics understood the symbolism immediately. This was a boundary made visible. Outside the venue, speculation intensified. Media voices, though held at a distance, began weaving narratives from fragments. Was this a quiet rebellion, a generational stand, or simply a father guarding his child's peace? The questions swirled faster than official explanations could contain them. And inside, Charles maintained a subdued composure. Observers noted the restraint, the careful neutrality, a monarch balancing pride in his grandson with the awareness of a deeper undercurrent. The symbolism extended beyond attendance. It lived in positioning, in alignment, in subtle gestures of solidarity. William and Catherine's united presence communicated something unmistakable. Their children are their responsibility first, the institution second. That message, though softly delivered, resonated with force. Because it redefined the order of priority within a structure historically governed by hierarchy. George, blissfully untouched by these complexities, represented innocence against a backdrop of generational tension. His performance was unburdened by the narratives unfolding around him. And that contrast between childhood purity and adult calculation made the moment almost poetic. The future king stood center stage as a child, while the current power structure recalibrated itself in silence. Whispers circulated among those who understand how royal history is written, not in sweeping declarations but in small, symbolic acts. Moments that appear private but echo publicly. A school performance may seem insignificant in the grand arc of monarchy, yet this one carried the imprint of transition. A visible assertion of parental authority. A quiet reinforcement of evolving boundaries. There was no dramatic confrontation. No visible fracture. Just an unmistakable shift in atmosphere. A recognition that something had changed not explosively, but permanently. The lines between ceremonial inclusion and personal space had been clarified in real time. And as applause filled the hall for a young boy who had simply done his best, the larger narrative continued unfolding beneath the surface. Because moments like this do not end when the curtains close. They ripple outward. They redefine expectations. And now, as the palace attempts to restore calm, one question lingers louder than ever. A single blocked invitation. A school performance. A quiet act of defiance. But history shows that within the royal family, it's often the smallest gestures that signal the largest transformations. And this moment may mark a turning point in the balance of power between past loyalties and future priorities. What unfolded was not explosive in appearance, yet its implications feel immense. William's decision was rooted in something far deeper than a guest list. It reflected a protective vision for the next generation, a determination to control not only how his children are seen, but how they are shaped. He is not merely raising heirs, he is shaping future leadership. And that requires boundaries. Clear ones, firm ones. Boundaries that communicate to the institution itself that his children will not be absorbed into symbolism before they are ready. At the same time, this incident exposes how fragile the image of unity truly is. The royal brand thrives on harmony, on the illusion that every internal tension dissolves beneath shared purpose. But harmony can be delicate. A single visible fracture can invite questions that echo far beyond palace gates. When attendance becomes exclusion, when silence becomes statement, the public senses it. And in a world that watches every move, perception becomes reality faster than any official clarification can contain it. Camilla's place in royal history remains complex, evolving yet still contested. She stands as queen, yet moments like this reveal that acceptance is layered. Titles may settle legal standing, but emotional integration is more elusive. Her journey from controversy to coronation was meant to symbolize closure, yet this decision suggests that closure is not absolute, it is conditional, dependent on trust that may never be fully symmetrical. And then there is Charles, a king navigating legacy under mounting strain. He carries the weight of decades of choices, of sacrifices, of reconciliation. His reign was meant to usher in calm continuity. Instead, he finds himself at the center of generational recalibration. A son stepping forward with quiet authority, a wife facing renewed scrutiny, a monarchy that must adapt without appearing unstable. Charles stands between past battles and future shifts, aware that every response, even silence, becomes part of the historical record. Underlying it all is the symbolic preservation of Diana's memory. Though never spoken in this moment, her presence lingers in the subtext. William's protectiveness, his insistence on safeguarding George's experience, resonates with a promise made long ago that the next generation would be shielded from the emotional turbulence he endured. That legacy is not ceremonial. It is personal. And in protecting his son, William reinforces the idea that history will not quietly rewrite itself. Public reaction, predictably, has been divided. Some view William's move as necessary, even admirable, a father prioritizing his child over optics. Others interpret it as a sign of deeper fracture within the institution. Loyalty splits along emotional lines. Sympathy shifts. Narratives harden. And as conversations unfold beyond palace walls, the monarchy once again finds itself balancing tradition against transformation. Yet the most unsettling element may be what this moment foreshadows. Because drawing a line, once done, establishes precedent. If William is willing to assert boundaries now to define influence, to limit access, to protect space, what happens when he holds the ultimate authority? When the crown rests not as inheritance waiting, but as power fully realized? Will these quiet recalibrations evolve into structural change? What makes this moment so powerful is its subtlety. There were no public declarations, no dramatic speeches, just a decision that revealed the direction of momentum. The future king is not waiting passively for his era to begin. He is shaping it quietly, deliberately, one boundary at a time. And perhaps that is why this feels larger than a school event, larger than a family disagreement. It feels like the early tremor before a shift, the kind that history recognizes only in retrospect. Because if this was only a school performance, then why does it feel like the opening scene of a much larger royal reckoning? Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.